Hello everybody and welcome to episode number 4 of the Let's Learn Master of Puppets guitar series. Today we will be covering every single note, every single time change, every single chord progression in a full, detailed musical analysis of Welcome Home, in parentheses, Sanitarium. I always enjoyed it when bands put their song titles in parentheses. It never made any sense to me. In this particular case, it does make sense. The hook of the song is caged within a parenthetical prison cell. Very appropriate considering the title of the song. Now, without further ado, let's unpack the psychological load that is Sanitarium by Metallica. Let's go. Sanitarium weaves itself in and out of being a ballad and a truly heavy metal track. With its glassy chorus clean tone and its high gain distortion, we are given two very distinct sound palettes, neither of which can survive without the other being there. Sanitarium is incredibly melodic from front to back, with almost every element catering to the harmonic structure to a T. From the vocals to the instrumental breaks, everything coalesces into a Hetfield-induced harmonic bliss. And who can forget the guitar solos? I didn't think it would be possible to rival the title track Master of Puppets, which had 2 solos. But geez, Kirk did it 4 times in one song. That's double the amount of puppets. Can you believe that? Alright, enough groveling over how good this song is. Let's get into the introduction guitar that comes in right out of the gate. Check it out. Now on the album, this guitar sounds much larger than any amplifier could ever produce. That's because there is a piano layered underneath on that open low E string right out of the gate. We can thank producer Flemming Rasmussen for that one. Now let's talk about some of the notes and the positions that we have to play to get through this part. We start off by karate chopping that low E string just like that. And you want to play it pretty hard as well. You want to try and match the transient of the piano that's layered as well, which can be very difficult to do. But yes, you want to hit it very hard, open E, so we're setting up the tone E minor. Then we hit the 12th fret harmonic on the high E string and the B string. You hit a harmonic by just gently pressing on top of the fret, just like that. Right after that, we have to do a little hammer-on pull-off at the 3rd and 5th fret down here on the high E string. So you're going to hit the 3rd fret on the E string first, then hit the B string in addition to that, while doing a hammer-on to a slide to the 2nd fret. Now this is actually outlining the 9th of the E minor chord, which is indicative of the harmonic structure that happens right after this. So, 9, you see that? That's the 2nd scale degree. We come back around to do this, hit the open E again, and we do the 2nd lick, which starts on the 2nd fret this time. Now the best way to do that is by picking the first one, hitting the B string underneath, hammering into the 3rd fret, and then pulling off at the same time that you hit the low E string. So that's very crucial. It's important that you do that because there is a high E and a low E playing at the same time. Let me just play that one more time. Look. Pull. And you want to pull off hard enough so that you're actually picking the open E string in addition to the low one. After that, we just keep going between the low E string and the high harmonics, and we increase the frequency as we move along. Check this out. The last time we do this, we go down to the G string now, creating an entire E minor chord with just harmonics. Pretty cool. The timing is indeed 4/4, and believe it or not, we follow a strict metronome at approximately 94 beats per minute. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and 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 4. And just because there are no drums doesn't mean that there's no count. So count. After we hit the final run of harmonics, we hit into the classic Sanitarium clean riff. there's a little controversy surrounding this riff. Some say it was ripped directly from a song called Rainbow Warrior by a band called Bleak House. Yeah, great band name, guys. Sounds pretty bleak to me. Well, let's hear their version first. Sounds pretty bleak, just like their future was. Now, I'm not going to harp on this for very long, but let's get the glaring differences out of the way. Sure, the first 3 chords have a similar vibe, but the rest of the progression has nothing to do with the song that Metallica supposedly directly ripped off from. It's also not even close when comparing the actual quality of the composition. I'm sorry, Bleak House, but 1986 Metallica has you beat by a long shot on this one. Now that we have that out of the way, it's time to figure out how to make this sound just like the classic riff. Now, before you even play a single note, let's get the effects right. Try to get the sound, the quality of the sound down. You first want to put on a nice warbly chorus. Not too fast of a wavelength, just enough to give you that detuned wow 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 like you're a little seasick. And then you want to put on a nice tremolo effect. A tremolo effect. Tremolo. What the heck is that? A tremolo effect. Tremolo sounds like a flavor of ice cream. Anyway, you want to set it to basically line up with the 8th note rhythm that's going on here. If you set maybe a step splicer to an 8th note or a 16th note rhythm, you'll get that idea, as long as you have the BPM set correctly, 94 beats per minute. The riff consists of a series of moving power chord shapes, which look like this. We start on the 2nd and 4th fret of the A and D string, and we pluck from the E, A, D to G. The E and G strings are open. That's an E minor 9 chord, which is our 1 chord. Then we move up a half step to turn it into a C chord, a C power chord, with a nice unison note between those 2 Gs, and an inverted C chord. Very nice sound. Beautiful. And then we move this up to the 5th fret for yet another type of chord, which is a D chord on top of an E. It's a D add 4 actually, because that G is the 4th scale degree. We then touch down on a chord that looks like an A major. That's because it is on the 5th fret of the low E string, and we go like this. 5th fret, 4th fret, open D. So that's an A add 4 this time. So we had D add 4, now we have A add 4. Now it's a major chord, right? A, C sharp, and the open D string. That creates that sound. And that's the major 4 chord, okay? So usually in the key of E minor, we'd have a minor 4 chord. Here we have a major 4. And then we slide down to this G position. That's just a straight up G major triad. Doesn't get any more basic than that. 3, 2, open D. And then we slide back into the A like this. So let's play that whole thing. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Whoa, hold on a minute. We have a little time change at the end there. That's a measure of 2-4. Now there's something interesting about those numbers, isn't there? 24 times on 2-4. 2 plus 4 equals 6. 2 plus 4 equals 6. And if we add another 24 in there, we have another 2 plus 4, which also equals 6. We're getting awfully close to an n times number here. Maybe we need to consult the Illuminati master from the 2nd song, Master of Puppets. Now, because this riff is played so many times over, we have to do things each time around to make it a little bit more interesting. The first move of which is done by bassist Cliff Burton and drummer Lars Ulrich. Check this out. Cliff Burton handles this syncopation by hammering into the root up top here, into the 5th here, and then a double root on the bottom octave twice, right into the riff, while Lars just bangs on his pots and pans the whole time. The drum and bass groove is then established 2 times before making way for the first guitar solo, which sounds like this. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist or even a master of puppets to know that this solo sounds real good. Let's figure out why by looking at the notes. This first riff is a series of stacked fifths on top of each other, or power chords that are just put right on top like that. Now this is actually the riff in the clean guitar, played up an octave. E, B, F sharp, G, which is the same as this. That's pretty cool, huh? Well, guess what? Works perfectly. We then resolve right into the root note with our pointer finger right at that point. Right after resolving on that E, we come up to the 12th fret of the G string with our pointer, and then we do a series of slides, moving up with 3 different fingers. So check that out. Start down at the 12th fret of the G string with the pointer, then we go ring on 14, 16, middle on 15, 17 B string, and then the pointer on the 15th, 17th on the high E string. The peak of this lick all the way up here is actually on an A. So the note A is the root note of the chord that's happening underneath. Perfectly placed. Perhaps a happy accident on part of Kirk Hammett? The world may never know. We continue on with a lick that uses harmony notes, or more like double stop notes. So we have to play 2 strings at the same time in a very unique fashion. We're going with the 20th and the 19th on the B and the E string, so the G and the B, the flat 3rd and the 5th of the E minor chord, and then down to 17, 15, which is the root and the minor 3rd. So this is a full E minor arpeggio, just moving in thirds. And then this note, we're going to go into the 19th fret of the B string, which is an F sharp, by the way. That's the 9th, the 2nd of the E minor chord. But we kind of like miss this 17th fret up top. Usually we'd play it like this, right? We'd have all the notes ringing, but this time we're kind of purposefully missing the 17th fret up at the top. Maybe it's because we played it earlier. The world may never know. I personally think Kirk meant to play both of those notes at the same time, but just missed it on the final take. Perhaps another happy accident by Kirk, or maybe even an oopsie. The lick continues with a hammer-on pull-off on the 17th and the 19th fret, just like that, and then another harmony moment, just like before, where we play the 19th fret of both the G and the B string, creating almost a D over an E sound, coming down this scale shape. Watch. You see how I played the 2 notes at the same time right there? And then played single notes on the way down. All the E natural minor scale, right down the B string. 19, 17, 15, 13, 12. Nice half-step resolution at the end. We cap off that lick by doing a hammer-on pull-off on the 12th fret of the B string, coming into the 14th fret of the G, and then sliding 12, 11, 12 on the D string, 14 on the A, and then sliding into the root note on the D string. Let me play that for you again. That accounts for the measure of 2-4 right at the end. We then come across an octave jump, which uses the intervals of an inverted power chord, just like this. We're at the 16th fret of the G, coming up, 16, 17, 19, and then back down. Let me play that again. Then immediately after that, we got to slide down, change position to the 14th fret, so that's where the pointer's going to be. Hit that note once, come up an entire octave to the high note A, and then... Alright, so we want to scale all the way down what would be the E Dorian scale. So this is not an E natural minor scale anymore because we have the 14th fret on the B string. That's the natural 6th of the E minor scale. And then a nice little bend and release at the end. Let me play that whole section again. Very nice. We come off of that with a very interesting arpeggio starting at the D string. It's an A minor arpeggio, and we have to use these fingers in order to make that happen. Ring finger on the 14th, pinky on the 14th, middle on the 13th, and the pointer at the 12th. Just like that. And you create that chord, but we have to separate each note. So you want to make sure you're moving along with each note change. Boom, 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 boom. A minor triad, arpeggio broken up. It's actually a second inversion A minor, which is very interesting too because just before we had a C sharp, which would be indicative of an A major, but now we're switching immediately back to A minor. Very cool. So let's do that again. We follow that with this. a nice 10th to 12th to 10th hammer-on pull-off to the 13th, resolving to that 12th fret again. That's a very common resolution in this song. That whole thing, very nice lick. The final lick of the solo makes 2 appearances in this song, so pay attention when we get to solo 2. We have 2 arpeggios that we're using that are kind of broken up a little bit. We're sliding into the 7th fret of the D, going 7, 6, skip the string, all the way up to the 5th fret of the high E string, and then we're going down to 5, 4, 3, back up, and then into the low E string as the last note of the solo. Let me play that again for you. 7, 6, 5, down. Make sure you incorporate those slides in there. You want to slide into this note, the first one, slide out of the last note on the top, slide into the bottom note again, and then do that same exact thing each time until you hit the final note. Let me do a quick run through here. We have the E minor stacked fifths, just like the riff on the bottom. Pointer, slide, 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 peak, little double stop, then boom, boom, scale, bam, bam, bam. E minor 9 again, resolving to the root, power chord inverted, slide positions, and then boom, arpeggio with the slides, and an open E to fade out into the distance for verse 1. Verse 1 continues to the same exact clean riff that was just going on through the intro and the solo. That same riff over and over again, right? That's why it's played so many times. But there are a couple little things in there that I want to point out before moving on. The first being Cliff's bass line during a couple different sections. Check this out. A perfect way to break up the monotony and play right in the pocket of Lars's very long drum fills. This could be attributed to producer Flemming Rasmussen's understanding of each individual band member's temperament, namely Cliff Burton, who enjoyed playing to a fully fleshed out track rather than just a drum track. Sometimes you don't have a lot going on when you're laying down the bass because that's one of the first things you put down. In this case, however, I believe a lot of the rhythm guitars were already laid down, so he had a fully formed track ready for him to go. And he liked to do that, and I guess that's why all of his bass lines work so well in context in all of these compositions. The other cool thing about this verse is the addition of this tiny vocal harmony.
Dream the same thing every night. I see our freedom in my sight.
And I'm sure we can all relate to that lyric with all the shenanigans going on in the world. And this type of thing, this little tiny change, a little harmony on top of one line in the verse to break up the monotony once again, solidifies why I believe that James Hetfield is the Paul McCartney of heavy metal. Coming into the pre-chorus, we finally get our first heavy rhythm section, so put on that high gain channel for this overdub. The riff is comprised of James's signature heavy chugs, and they go like this. We have an E to a B to C, D, G, A. So check that out. So we're going 2 on the E, so it's 8th notes each time, right? To B twice, then going to an E5 to a C5 twice, same thing, all the way through the D chord. So that's just straight 2 times on each chord on each of the power chords there. And then 1, 2, 3, right to G, dun, dun, da, dun, da, with that exact rhythm too. So let me do that one more time. 1 and mute, 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 unmute, un. So you got to follow that exactly how it is. The second time through has a rhythmic variation that helps ease us into the chorus riff. So everything else is pretty much the same. E, E, B, B, E, E, C, C, E, E, D, E, ba, 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 da, 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 da. So we're actually doubling up on that A. 1 and a 2, and then going G, A, G, putting a gag order on the Sanitarium so that they don't mistreat their good customers, and that's what we're going to be doing. We'll play that one more time. E, E, B, B, E, E, C, C, E, E, D, E, A, A, G. and then we are into the chorus section. But there is a tiny little overdub that happens in there as well. There's a little slide that's just dubbed in there to, I guess, I don't know, create some sort of transition. Check it out. Here's what it is. It makes the guitars pop out for just that brief moment to help us transition into the chorus section, which sounds like this. The chorus riff consists of a sliding power chord line, followed by a single note descending scale. You start on an open E power chord just like this, then a little mute in between to a G, F sharp, power chords just like that, and then C to B. So 3rd fret to 2nd fret, 3rd fret to 2nd fret. One more time, E, G, F, C, B, C, B. And all of those chords are on the upbeats of the 16th note pattern. They're actually on the enna of each beat. So check this out. We have 1, enna, enna, enna. See how it's syncopated? And then we do this. That little scale pattern right there, we're hammering into the 2nd fret of the D string, okay, starting from the open and then pulling off again. So, alright, so that's just a flat 7 to the root, back to the flat 7. Then we're going to the 3rd fret of the A string to the 2nd fret. All downstroke, really heavy palm mutes. And then we're going to go 5th fret, 3rd fret, 2nd fret on the low E string. But we're going to double up on that F sharp. Now what's interesting about that F sharp is that originally I thought it went back up to the G. I thought it was supposed to sound like this. But apparently I was wrong. All of these years I was wrong about this one as well. It took me 20 years to figure this out. Doesn't it seem to be a double note rather than coming back up to the G? I think the tab books have been wrong all these years as well, because that's what it says in those pesky books. Terrible. The second time through we have a totally different ending where we hang on the B chord for a little bit. So we start off the same. And a 2E enna, okay, and then this rhythm. C to G, F, boom. So that's a 3E-N, 4E-N going into the F chord. Now we're holding on to a C right here, going to C, B, G. Okay, that's the 3E end. On the 4E end, we're doing this, F sharp, F. So we're actually descending down chromatically from the natural 2 to the flat 2. So we actually saw that in Battery in the first episode. If you didn't watch the first episode, you should go and you should watch that, because there are a lot of similarities happening here. They're repeating themselves quite often. The third time around is basically the same as the first time, but we have an added harmony guitar on the top that accompanies the descending scale line. And it goes like this. It starts at the 4th fret of the D string to the 7th of the A, coming back up, and then until we finally reach a low G at the end. So here it is slow. And that G happens right on the E as it's coming out, so it harmonizes the chord of the next phrase. That's pretty cool. Here it is in context. It starts off as thirds being harmonized for the first 4 notes, and then it goes right to perfect fifths because of how the second harmony is played. And then finally resolving onto that E minor chord at the end. It's a pretty cool thing. Alright, let's get on to the 4th and final time through the chorus. So basically we're doing all the same stuff, but we have a little more of a heavy emphasis on the C to the B chord. So instead of doing the syncopation at the end where we have the enna, we're actually going and 1, 2, 3, 4, just like that. Ba ba, just leave me alone, right? This is a great way to release us from the syncopation that we were used to the first 3 times around. Instead of being on the upbeat, we're on an extremely heavy downbeat, emphasizing that B chord, the dominant chord nonetheless. One of the most powerful chords in existence. Just as powerful as Chief Bromden throwing that sink through the wall in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, breaking us free of this sanitarium once and for all. Let's play through that chorus section slow. 1, enna, 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 2, 3, enna, 4, enna, 1, enna, 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 2, enna, 3, and 4, and 1. dominant chord, just as dominant as throwing a giant sink through the wall that nobody else could lift except for the big chief. What a good character, what a great guy. That last B chord rings out for the final Just Leave Me Alone. We want the Sanitarium to leave us alone. This is a pretty scary place if a building is talking to you. Very scary situation to be in. But that rings out, allowing us for guitar solo number 2 to take over right after that. That sounds like this. Solo number 2 is a little more busy and technical than the first one. It also includes a harmony guitar that jumps in and out throughout its progression. The first lick happens right on top of that B chord and outlines a B minor pentatonic scale, just like this. We slide in from the 5th fret to the 7th fret and go 5, 7, and then a double 5 on the A string. Alright, so that's just the root note to the minor 3rd. So, pretty easy. You can do all downstrokes as well, because it's not that fast. Then we slide from 7 to 9, which is going to the perfect 5th of the B chord, to the 7th on the D string. Same exact rhythm, same exact idea. We continue up on the D string, 7 and 9. We're an octave higher than we started, doing the same intervals. Then to the 7th fret of the G string for that double note. So then we continue going like this. Those are the last 3 notes, and we just go like that with a nice stop at the end there. So we go slide, double, slide, double, slide, double, slide, double. You also want to make sure you're sliding with the ring finger each time. Look, ring, pointer, ring, pointer, ring, pointer, ring. Well, that's not a pointer there, but you get the idea. Now that's basically just a B minor 7 arpeggio being outlined as a pentatonic scale. After that, we head up to this E minor scale ascension, where we're starting on the root note and then going up the first 5 notes, but real high. So, a very beautiful line too, so simple. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 1. Which then goes right into this little bit. So that's just little trills, alright? Little mini trills. Hammer, pull to the 17th fret, hammer, pull to the 15th fret, and then hammer, hammer, pull down to that one. So you want to make sure you're counting that right. So we got 1, 2, 3, 3 notes, 1, 2, 3, 3 notes again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, boom. If you can nail those rhythms right there, this is going to be so much easy, right? Let me just play it fast. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, boom. Just make sure you get that. Here's that lick nice and slow. These trills seem more reminiscent of something a classical or an orchestral instrument would play, like a flute or something like that. Something very lovely sounding, just like they would say in Carnegie Hall. The next little bit is pretty interesting because it looks like Kirk Hammett used 2 separate takes to get in and out of each lick. Check out what it sounds like. The first take holds on to that bent note, while another take comes in over the top to play the next lick. And here's what comes up next. This is probably why he had to do it on a separate take, because it's a pretty tough lick. That's a pretty long string of notes heading down the E Dorian scale. Let's break it down. It starts off with a pickup on the 14th and 15th fret of the high E string like this, before we hit the first downbeat. Now it's very important, it's crucial to break down difficult sections like this into maybe 2 or 3 bars at a time. Where here we're actually going to do it measure by measure. So we have a pickup here, and a 1D and a triplet E and a. Alright, you see that? Da-da, 1E and a triple E and a. So you got to make sure you hit all those notes like that in that rhythm so you understand where the downbeats are. The next 2 beats come in like this. 3 triplet 4E and a. That's right, these only happen 2 beats out of clip, right? And a 1 E and a triple E and a 3 E, triple it, 4 E and a... This is all over the E Dorian scale, by the way, because we have the 14th fret of the B string. That's C sharp instead of C natural, the natural 6. And make sure you slide it to the 12th fret at the very end there. And the last 2 beats for that pesky 2/4 measure that I keep talking about go like this. A nice little legato and slidey lick that just takes up 2 beats, 16th notes. So 1 E and a 2 E and a boom. We're going 14 to 12, pull off, slide, hammer, pull, slide, slide from 12-11, and then into the root, just like we always do with these solos. Here's the whole 6 beats. Try to internalize that counting as you're moving through. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1. Nice, but we're not in the clear yet. We have another lick that descends down in the same type of rhythm, going down, descending in fifths, okay, with one little tritone in there as well. We use the same Dorian pattern, but check this out. Ready? This lick starts on the downbeat of 4 all the way up at the 17th fret of the B string. We come down, we slide with our pointer finger, 17 to 15. With the ring, we're going to grab that high 17 on the E string, go 15, 14, 15 on the E, right? So that's that tritone. 14, 12, 14, 12, 10, 12, 10, 8, 10, and then 8, 7, until we finally hit a different pattern here, which is a B minor arpeggio at the 7th fret. And then down to the 9th, with a little bend coming out of a B pentatonic minor type of idea. Now, of course, rhythmically, it's very important we understand what's happening here. We start on beat 4. 4 and the straight 16th notes, but because we're playing 5 notes in each part, we're syncopating the notes that are on the E string. And, E, 2, E, and. So if you syncopate everything on the high E string, you feel out where all those notes are, it becomes a little easier to play this. And of course, those last 2 little bends, or that one bend I should say, is the root going up to the 2nd, back to the root. That's why it works so well. The 9s really are your friend. Following that, we had a couple extra notes that leap downward, so going from the root to 7 down to 5, nice and melodically. And nothing really too crazy, nothing too special to say about that. You're just going down an E, a D, and a G. We then end this section the exact same way the first part ends, with a tiny little difference at the end. So if you remember everything from before, A major arpeggio, G major arpeggio, A major, and then instead of going down to the low E, we hit the 9th fret of the G string, which is a middle E. So we're still ending on the root note. Ready? So. Easy peasy. What a great lead part, but it's not over yet. We still have some harmony bits to go over. Check this out. This one climbs up a minor 3rd higher than the original harmony, so it's actually a G major shape rather than an E minor shape. We start at the 20th fret going 20, 22, 19, 20, 22, 20, and then back down to actually the 17th fret. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but it goes like this. Very pretty melody. It sounds very happy actually, but because we're playing in a minor context, it sounds very sad. Remember that. So real slow. And because we're not leaping down as far as the original harmony, we're actually creating a perfect 5th between the 2 guitars. Listen to this. Doesn't that sound beautiful? It sounds super consonant, being the perfect 5th instead of just a 3rd. The next half continues with 3rds above the original line, just like this. Just like before, you have to be dead accurate with those trills. And in a similar fashion with this one, the intervals are very similar. We don't go down these big leaps like in the original harmony part. We're just coming down a couple steps here, if any. So we're actually ending on a G while the original one goes down to a B, creating a minor 6th harmony this time. So it goes from perfect 5th to minor 6th. Very interesting. It's all part of an E minor arpeggio anyway, so we're all good to go. The harmony ends with a very difficult to discern bend that happens at the 14th fret of the high E string. It's hard to tell when it actually ends or not, especially when you listen to the isolated recording. Check this out. Yet another happy accident, Mr. Hammett? It appears as if your luck is beginning to rival that of the Grateful Dead's tour bus driver, who famously took LSD just before the tour started, and somehow got them to all of the gigs successfully, without any real problem at all. And they were able to go on stage and play their instruments high on LSD too, which is also a total accident. I don't quite understand how that works, but Mr. Hammett, this reminds me of how you brought Metallica to stardom, international commercial success, with your luck in creating guitar solos. Pretty cool, man. There's one more harmony that happens at the very end of this solo, so let's hear that real quick. It just harmonizes the original A major and G major arpeggios. We're just starting on the major 3rd this time. Same string skipping and everything, okay? So we're going to the 11th fret of the D, to the 9th of the G, all the way up to the 9th of the E. So we're very major 3rd heavy here. And then we go down to the 9th fret, 7th on the G, 7th fret on the high E string as well, and then sliding back, and then stopping at the 9th fret of the G string because the other guitar takes over on that. So real slow. And then we just stop dead in our tracks because we have to let the second verse take over. Verse 2 continues on with the same exact riff we've been playing for the first verse and this guitar solo, but I'd like to point out another vocal harmony that comes in right here. Check it out.
Whisper things into my brain, assuring me that I'm insane.
I will reiterate the fact that little things like this help out the big picture immensely. This line is so good, in fact, that James Hetfield likes to replace it live instead of singing the original line. The original melody kind of sucks big beefy cow balls now, doesn't it? I think I agree with James's decision of replacing it live. Very good move. Anyway, let's move on with the song. We come into pre-chorus 2, which is exactly the same as pre-chorus 1, so we don't have to go over that again. And we then play an elongated version of the chorus section. So check this out. After the original chorus plays, we have a little tag at the end that repeats and emphasizes the hook. The end of the chorus happens the exact same way as it did the first time, with the emphasis going from C to B. We play the riff, and then we come back in for a tag. We do the exact same thing, emphasizing that C going to B, so we have that hard downbeat rhythm coming in, no syncopation here. And the vocal melody goes up a little bit higher on this 5 chord. So we're really emphasizing the 5 chord and strengthening that emphasis by bringing the vocal melody up higher. Check it out. Sanitarium. Now here's the rub. We don't ever come back to that chorus section ever again for the rest of the song. It's a good thing we emphasize those last 2 chords a couple times to really drive the point home that this is Sanitarium, in fact, because the later half of the song doesn't repeat anything we've done so far. It's all unique to the second half. We begin the second half of the song with some E chugs, down-picked of course. We play these at a double-time tempo for 4 measures, until we evolve the riff into that O2-O2 hammer-on the A and the D string. That creates an E power chord, just like that. So let me do that again. Which then evolves into this more dissonant chord, which is on the 1st fret. So you're just hammering the same idea, but going to the 1st fret instead. That creates an E flat over an E, which is incredibly dissonant. That's a half step away from the root note. It actually makes a major 7th chord with a sharped 4th or a flatted 5th, okay? Now, is this in the Lydian mode here? I think not. This chord is simply something that just sounds cool and dissonant. Remember, not everything needs a fancy explanation in order to justify its existence. Let's get back into the pattern. So we do that double hammer-on for the first one, then into the 1st fret. So you do 2 hammers on the open 2, 3 hammers on the open 1, and 1 more hammer at the end for the open 2. Now this only happens for the very first time. Before, we have to switch gears and do basically the opposite thing. You go onto the 1st fret for the first time. So now we do 2 on the O1, 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 O2. So it's basically the same thing, but we're starting on the O1 instead of the O2. So it's 1 time on the O2 starting, and then 3 times with the pattern we just did there. The main rhythm that repeats here is a sequence of 2 8th notes, followed by a break, followed by another 2 8th notes. Goes something like this. 1 and 3. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 3, 4 and 2. Going over the bar, repeating the same rhythm. Ready? Here it is again. 1 and 3, 4 and 2. 1 and 4 and 2. And then it goes on to repeat 1 more time. But just remember that sequence, alright? Rhythm is extremely important, especially when you're the outside member of Metallica trying to learn these songs. After that double time riff, we hit into the B section, which actually becomes a halftime riff. It's a series of chords, 4 chords, a nice easy chord progression right here, of course, but there is some complicated stuff going on that we got to talk about. But this is basically acting as a verse the first time around, and then later on it supports the harmony and guitar solo at the end of the song, so it's a pretty important part. In lieu of the hammer-ons for the previous section, we're actually just using down picks on the O2s with extreme Hetfield accuracy like this. O2 to bam! And that always precedes the chord that is about to follow. So in the first one we're doing O2 to E, full power chord, only hitting the A and D strings in between. The second one is O2 to D, then O2 to F, O2 to C, C, B, B, B. And you want to make sure you're playing it just like that. All downstrokes, very clunky almost. Extremely bam, 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 bam. Very stiff, very rigid. Bam, boom, thank you, ma'am. Like a man, a bam, a bam. Ready? O2 to E, which is the 1 chord. O2 to D, which is the flat 7th chord. O2 to F, that's the flat 2 chord. O2 to C, flat 6 to B, which is the 5 chord. That last B5 chord is a major 5, and the reason why we know this is because in the vocal line, James Hetfield sings a D sharp on top, which is the raised 7th scale degree of the E harmonic minor scale, which is a staple of all our favorite classical composers.
For reaching out again!
The rhythm is a crucial element to this to understand because it's going to become very important later on when we get into some rhythmic trickery. But in this case, it's pretty straightforward. We do this. 1 E, a 2, 3, 4. 1 E, a 2, 3, 4. 1 E, a 2, 3, 4. 1 E, a 2, 3, a bum. And then it just repeats again. So that first ba-dum-bum is on beat 1. And if you can just remember that, feel it starting on beat 1. 1 and a 2, 3, 4. And the accent is actually on 2. Immediately after that second time through, we hit back to the previous riff, the more thrashy, fast one, with a nasty guitar solo on top. Guitar solo number 3. Let's hear it. The speedy nature of this solo may deter the faint of heart from even attempting it, but we're going to break it down into fluttery chunks until we have a full-blown 3D printed chainsaw grafted to our forearms. We start off with some E minor spasms rooted at the 12th fret like this. Now let's take a look at what we're doing there. We're starting off at the 12th fret of the G with 4 beats of tremolo picking on that note. Now the second measure, we're just going into the 16th fret and then coming back down. 1, 2, 3, 4. So those two together, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we hit the next 2 beats on the same string, but this time we're going 14, 16 over the course of 2. So like this, 1, 2. Alright, watch that again. 1, 2, 1, 2. Next, we move up to the B string, still rooted on the 12th fret, but this time we're hitting 3 beats on the same string. We're going 13th fret, 15th, and 17th. So you got to stretch out a little bit. I'd use all 4 fingers to get through to there. Middle here, ring here, and pinky up top for 3 beats. So let's check that out. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Just like that. Constantly picking the entire time as well. And then we move up to the E string where we just go to the 15th fret up to the 17th. And then slide out of that top note. So that's the peak. Once we hit the peak, we slide out of it. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and peak. Here's the entire thing slow. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. After that drop down, we come in with this fast lick. And all that's happening there is a series of pull-offs, alright? So you're pulling off twice on the same string, from 17 to 15 down to 12, okay? So 17, 15, 12, and 17, 15, 12 on the B as well, okay? Now we do that a total of 4 times. 1, 3, 4, just like that before we hit into that bend. But let's talk about how we're going to do that. You can use your ring, your pinky, and your pointer for that. So pinky, ring, pointer, and then pinky, ring, pointer. Or you can even use your ring, middle, and pointer, depending on which one's easier for you. Remember to have a good amount of wah on there as well, but depending on what's easier, just go with that. The next bend happens on the 17th fret, and you're basically going to pick once, and then add a lot of vibrato the second time around, okay? So check that out. Pick once, release, nice amount of vibrato, then scale down. Now those 2 notes are pretty interesting, right? You don't really hear that too often. Those are pretty jazzy notes. We're going from F sharp to D. So that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's not on an E chord. No, that's a D major chord on top of an E, because that's the 9th of the E chord and the flat 7th, which equates to D and F sharp. Pretty cool. The next lick kind of gets a little bit obscured because we're hopping all the way down to the low register of the guitar. We're also playing in an F sharp pattern, which then turns into a B minor pattern, and there's tons of wah and resonance on it, so it kind of obfuscates the octave we're actually playing in, even though we're down here in the 2nd fret position. So check this out. You might want to add a little pinch in there to get the right octave or the right harmonic structure up top. But we start over here at 2nd to 4th. That's the pickup into the actual riff. So this is going to be the downbeat. We're bending a whole step on the D string 4th fret. That's actually a 9th if we're talking about F sharp, or we're bending into the major 3rd of the E chord, which is kind of strange. But I'm thinking about it in terms of being in F sharp morphing into B minor. So that's the next lick, right? So far so good. And then we come back up, which that's explicitly B minor right there. Or B minor blues more specifically. So right on there. So super bluesy notes, and just follow the pattern exactly. It's basically a B minor blues scale on top of an E chord, making some pretty colorful notes, but I wouldn't worry about it too much. Next we come up with some real rock and wah stuff. We pick up into the 7th fret of the G string like this. Alright, so we're getting a little surf rocky here, right? Kirk Hammett must have been riding the waves, breaking the waves in Hawaii, man, if you know what I'm talking about. So we're going like this. Bend on the 7th fret, whole step. Okay, so it's a unison with the 5th fret on the B string. And then increasing the frequency as you move along. Get a little faster. Not really much to say about that. We're back in an E position as well, which is nice too. No more obfuscating the key center, Kirk Hammett. I hate it when you do that. Actually, I like it. Let's move on. So we come up to the 14th and the 12th fret of the G and the B to come into a whole nother section here. Then, like this. So this is almost like a pentatonic E minor type of idea, but we're hitting some colorful notes in between, some regular E minor scale tones. We have to bend into the 15th fret like this, pick again with it released, come down to the 12th, and pick every single note as well. Even when we continue on, look, bend, release, but pick again. Okay, so watch this. Watch all those picks. This is a flurry of downstrokes. Kirk Hammett must have been hanging out with James Hetfield. Well, of course he was hanging out with James Hetfield. They're in the same band, stupid. Here we go. Alright, so all downstrokes on that, nice and quick and brisk. Now, if you notice something, we came through 3 very specific ranges on the guitar. We started up here with fast notes on a higher register, right? And then we made our way to the lower portion of the guitar. And then we're coming into the middle, the meat of the guitar. And then here, back to the high part. And then we blast up into the stratosphere with all this tremolo picking. Check it out. So we're coming all the way up the E minor scale with very specific patterns. Just 3 notes at a time, ascending all the way up. So we start 15, 14, 12, going like this. And then right up, 17, 15, 14, 19, 17, 15, 20, 19, 17, 22, 20, 19, and then boom, up to a whole step bend on the 22nd fret. That's an extremely high E, okay? Let's do that slowly. Add a lot of vibrato, slide out of it for maximum dynamic effect. Oh man, I think I need some ice on my forearm and on my soul, because a psychologically disturbed Kirk Hammett just tore it right out of my body. The nerve of this guy. The solo then leads us into a transition that's based on the bridge verse riff, but we only play the first 2 chords and then start the sequence over again. It goes like this. E, then we stop, D, then we stop, and then we get right into the next section. Right after that manic episode deep within the Sanitarium, we begin to have a little relief from our own personal hell, coming into a section that is melodically and harmonically connected to our own sense of ecstasy. So we're coming up to heaven, we're coming out of hell, and we're going way up this time. So check this out. The first harmonic layer is put on top of the E minor, D, F, and C, B progression that we heard before from that verse riff for the bridge. The line that comes in on top is reminiscent of the vocal melody almost. It actually is pretty much identical. Check it out. It's all the same melodic content of the vocal melody from before, so that's pretty awesome, keeping some continuity throughout our journey in the Sanitarium. Let's talk about the positioning a little bit. We're going up to the 7th fret, but we have to slide into it. And then we have to palm mute those next 2 notes, going right in here, pushing into the 9th fret. Then we slide again. Then here we don't slide on the 8th fret. Do a hammer-on pull, resolving into the E, which is actually the major 3rd of the C chord, and then right into that B chord line with the D sharp, E, F sharp, resolving to the root, but instead of just playing the note there and holding it, we hit a low E on the bottom for a little extra flair or spice, as they say. So here it is again. Slide. Don't slide, but keep it tight. And that just goes on to repeat through that entire section. Now, as if that melody isn't cool enough, we make it even cooler when we start looking at the rhythmic positioning. That's right, the accented beat that lands on. This line comes in on beat 3 of the progression, which makes it seem like this should actually be beat 1. Okay, so we're hitting it, you're hitting the accent so hard, it makes it feel like we're on the first beat of the measure, but really we're on the third beat. We're responding to the other chords, okay? Lars and Cliff are both outlining these beats as well, so it makes it feel like the entire band is actually playing on beat 1 when this harmony melody starts. But in reality, the progression starts earlier with the chords from before. 1, 2, 3, with the call and response. So really it's a call and response, but the entire band is almost playing something completely different and separate from the rhythm guitar. So we have two separate rhythmic centers going on at the same time, where both of them are battling for dominance over beat 1. But really, the only one that has dominance over beat 1 is the rhythm guitar, because I'll show you why. If we were to start on another beat, we would basically have to add a couple extra beats coming in toward the end of that, which wouldn't really make any sense. Let's apply Occam's razor to this, the path of least resistance. What makes the most sense? Basically changing the rhythmic center in lieu of a new part, just so we can make it seem like that is actually beat 1, or the rhythm stays exactly the same, it's just offset by a little fancy trickery done with the drums and the bass and the melodic part. I think we know what the answer is to that. The plot thickens a little bit even beyond there. We have a harmony that comes in on top of the original line, so a higher harmony. Check this out. We begin a minor third above the original note, so we're starting on G. And all the same articulation, right? But we don't follow the harmony exactly how it would normally be done. We actually come into some unison notes coming in after that, so look at this. We actually come into the lower part for a hot second, and then branch back up into the higher harmony. So listen to this again. And then we dip back up to the high notes, which makes sense. We also change the harmonic value of that as well. Instead of harmonizing in thirds, which we've been doing, coming down here actually changes it to a perfect fourth harmony to a fifth. Alright, so check that out. Kind of cool right there, and it really emphasizes that high note as being a perfect fifth above that root note. So let's go on a little bit further. We're going like this. Same articulation, but this is a perfect fifth harmony all the way throughout, so it would sound like this. And then eventually coming back, because we have a leap to the minor third down at the bottom. So very cool sound. And then we just complete it by doing this. And that goes right along with the line underneath, pretty much perfectly. So let me play that slow for you as one guitar, okay? So you can get an idea for how the harmonies sound. Watch this. See that split after the unison then? Awesome when all things are considered. The use of shifting intervals serves to obfuscate which guitar is playing which notes. We're moving from thirds to unison to fifths back to thirds all in one pass. This also serves to make this section incredibly interesting and unique, which I believe will please the Master of Puppets greatly, possibly leading to a reduced sentence at the Sanitarium. But alas, since we live in an age of madness, the genius who created this part, this beautiful music, will just be seen as a blabbering buffoon with nothing to offer to the uncultured masses. Therefore, he must become heavily medicated and thrown into a padded cell. But all is not lost. We have one more chance to please the court of public opinion. With guitar solo number 4, we have one more chance for our beloved madman Kirk to prove his innocence to the uncultured masses. The first part of Solo 4 begins a lot like the first harmony part that we heard earlier, except we have some different intervals here. So we start by going down a half step, and then climbing up the E minor scale, just like this. Alright, so that's pretty basic, but the interesting part is that the lower harmonies are still playing underneath it, which is kind of crazy. A lot of layers going on. But the original harmony went down a whole step. Right? This one's going. That's creating a lot of dissonance between those two notes. A minor second. Now check out how that sounds. A D and a D sharp played together. That sounds pretty bad, right? But for some reason, because everything is just going together, it seems to sound fine. No problems with me here. We come right out of that first lick with something that's reminiscent of an E minor pentatonic scale. Well, it's not reminiscent of it, it is an E minor pentatonic scale. Look. And we slide into the position coming from 12 to 14 on the A. Nice and bluesy. Then we continue on going 14, 12, bend, 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 ba-bum. So nice and bluesy again. So not a lot going on here. Some stereotypical E minor blues licks that sound great over this entire progression. So we have that. Bend, bend, ba-dum. Then we do this little double 14 to a double stop. Right, we have that train horn sound. I keep talking about that too. Nice and bluesy as well. We continue on with something even better. Alright, so we're doing a quick boom, bum, bum, and then bend, release, and then coming back down that scale again. So we move between those 5 notes very often, or I should say 4 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Or 1, 2, 3, 4. And a lot of this is hinging upon those 5 notes. It's pretty awesome. It is a pentatonic scale after all. I keep saying 5, but it's actually 4. But then again, we hit all 5 at some point. I don't know, I'm rambling at this point. We continue with the bluesy theme coming up to this. Alright, so it doesn't really get much more bluesy than that. A nice bend at the 14th fret of the G. Coming all the way up to the 12th fret of the E, 12B. And then bending into the unison note on the 15th fret of the B string to match the E. And then hitting a 15-12 to ascend up to another higher bend that we're going to hit here. Alright, so that's just the 15th fret going twice. Let me play all that up to that point, nice and slow. Nice and tasty. So here's where things get a little bit tricky, not too bad, but we have to do a specific amount of pull-offs on the 15th fret of the 12th, right? Just like this. 3 times before holding down the 12th fret of the B string, so. You want to make sure that 12th fret of the B string is actually on the downbeat. Just like that, before you scale all the way back down. So you want to make sure you're hitting these key rhythmic points. I've been saying this the entire time, and I'm going to continue saying it in the future, so be prepared to hear that. That continues to morph into a Jimmy Page-esque Stairway to Heaven inspired lick that goes like this. So you basically want to just downpick each time you hit the 14th fret, whether you're bending it or not. Check this out. Bend, pull, unbent, pick, bend again. Until you get that rhythmic feel. And on the very last one, you hold that bend out. This then brings us into the final ascending pattern. To bring this solo to an end, we just start on an F sharp, which is on the 11th fret of the G. Go go 11, 12, 14, scaling up the E minor scale to the B, 12th fret, and then slide up nicely and hit that E at the 17th fret of the B string twice to end it. A very nice melodic way of coming to a close. Which, by the way, every single one of these solos so far ends on a different root note E. Every single one of them ends on E. I don't know if you noticed that. The first one ends on a low E. The second one ends on this middle E. The last one ends on an erratic high E that's way into the stratosphere, worthy of being put in a straitjacket over. And then this last one is the E below the extreme E. So we're actually tempering our mental illness here in the Sanitarium. So check that out. The first one ends here. The second one ends here. The third one ends here, right? Which is just crazy. We got to stop doing that. And then the last one ends on that slightly more tempered root note E. So I just found that very interesting. Just some food for thought there. It's like the old saying goes, insanity is trying the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. It looks like we're going to be locked away for quite some time if this is the case. The final outro section plays the same type of rhythm, but with some different breaks, some slides, and slight variations to make it a little bit more interesting. It also has a tag at the end as well, much like our chorus section from earlier. Check it out. It uses the same old O2 on the A and D string, going to the different ones, but this time we're just holding it out once and then doing a slide afterward. Then going to the next chord. D, down to F, slide. An interesting thing to point out is that Lars chose only to play along with the first part of the guitar, leaving the slides completely by themselves. Check out what that sounds like. And this adds a really nice touch when the guitar just gets to play the last C and B chords by itself. Check that out. See how it's completely by itself? This gives those chords a little bit more weight as we approach the ending. The second time around, a slightly different approach is used. Now everybody is playing full blast together with some triplet rhythms dispersed in between, like this. Triple it by, triple it by. Triple it by, triple it by, triple it by, slow retardando, and then these chords, which go all the way down the E minor scale, and we just blast away rock and roll style on the very final E minor chord. And you might want to add even a open G on top of that as well to give a little bit more. If I had more volume, I'd be able to feed this back, but unfortunately I just look like a fool because I can't get any feedback out of my own amp. Hold on a sec, here it comes, there it comes, there it goes. You hear that? It's really slight, but it's just not loud enough. I'm sorry guys, I failed you, but I didn't fail you in the long run. Hopefully we learned everything we needed to learn about Welcome Home, Sanitarium in parentheses. Now hopefully we can escape from our parenthetical prison cell, those parenthetical citations your English teacher made you do all those years. Hopefully we can escape that prison cell of intellectual property. I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. This has been a long one. 4 solos, tons of riffs. One clean riff that goes for a really long time, but that was almost like meditating. I was meditating for a very long time. I had to focus to play the clean part 24 times in a row. Kind of crazy. Hopefully everybody enjoyed this part of the journey. We're going to have many more. I got to get through the rest of the album. And if you want to support the channel even more, go to www.subscribestar.com/RomanOva Music. You can pledge pretty much any amount you want. I have some subscription tiers set up for different things, different perks for different tiers. Now, the main perk that I have associated with my Subscribe Star is the $20 tier. This gives you access to the RomanOva Guitar Gym, which is a series which gives you the power to get better at guitar. It's guitar season every single season, so we have to make sure we have plenty of exercises. And this RomanOva Guitar Gym Gives you all the exercises you're going to need. I go through the open notes and the positioning and speed exercises, theory, all the good stuff. Everything I include in these videos is applied to those videos, alright? But a little more generalized. So if you're interested in that, $20 a month will get you access to every single one of those videos. Alright, everybody. Thanks so much for coming along. I will see you on the next one, which is going to be kind of crazy. And I think you know why it's going to be kind of crazy. Goodbye.